Manhunt, in my opinion, is Rockstar's most best, notorious, brutal game that I think when I played as a child was the most just wild thing to me, honestly. But the thing I really dislike about what Rockstar did with Manhunt is that they just left it alone. They just left it high and dry. They didn't do anything with Manhunt, if that makes sense. Like the original lore with Cash, we don't know anything about what happened after that. And now this is what I want to pick up on in this video. If Manhunt 3 was made, what would it be about? Who would the characters be? What would the antagonists be? Just what missions, how would Manhunt be like if we actually had Manhunt 3? Now honestly, I don't think we might even get Manhunt 3, honestly, because of what Manhunt has went through, because Manhunt is so controversial. But this was a lot of fun to make otherwise, so you know what, here it goes. How would Manhunt 3 be like? Okay, first we need to think about what do we know from after the events of Manhunt. What we know is that the reporter exposed the snuff film ring at the end, along with Gary Schaefer, who was the corrupt chief, whose lawyer pleaded him not guilty. Everything from what the reporter said and the snuff film ring being exposed was at the end of the game, since we all know that.
Acclaimed movie maker Lionel Starkweather has been found dead today, along with several of his bodyguards, at his estate at the Wapona Hills residential district. In what investigators are calling a bloody vendetta, an unknown assailant infiltrated the compound, killing Starkweather, but more interestingly, leading police to the site of a snuff film ring being run from the estate's confines. Linked to this ring is Carcer City's own police chief, Gary Schaefer, whose lawyer stated that he intends to plead not guilty.
The reporter also had an interview at a psychiatric mental hospital. People think the reporter is crazy, ill, and is lying about seeing Cash because no one saw her speak to him.
Even I could diagnose what's wrong with me. Post-traumatic stress, or whatever the hell you call it. And let's be straight about it, I did experience trauma. Not trauma like my cat died or I'm a fat girl or any of that shit. I saw a man get killed by the state. A guy get killed by the state with a priest and prison guys and in the chair. I was behind the glass. I saw him die. Then I spoke to him. To Cash.
Did you? But no one else saw Cash or spoke to him.
So I'm a liar now. I'm a liar? What about the police? What about the prison system? What about it? What about Starkweather? You know that's true. I had a known killer in my car. A guy I saw killed, and I was speaking to him, threatened by him, and he was dead.
Because at the end of Divided They Fall, you know, the reporter saves Cash from getting shot at the War Dogs, and then press conference starts, or press coverage starts, right? So the police found out about the snuff film ring via Cash killing Starkweather in his mansion, which we seen at the end of Manhunt from the reporter's story. At the end, Cash just vanishes with his whereabouts being unknown. Mr. Nasty, who is the cover boy of the game, which no one even talks about in the game, is still out there, selling everything. And the events of Manhunt was being broadcasted on a kids channel, which Miss Nasty posted there. So with all this information in mind, with the reporter exposing the snuff film ring, to her being in a psychiatric mental hospital, people thinking she's crazy and didn't see Cash disappearing, Mr. Nasty still being out there, this leads me to make this concept of Manhunt 3. I know that people don't really like the idea of like when games go back and show you, what happened, but with Manhunt, I feel like this game needs that. This game needs that closure to actually have a valid, a valid conclusion as to what happened to everything. Cause it just feels like everything just left. Like the game itself was good, but the conclusion is just left everything just so dry. Like I want to know more about Mr. Nasty. I want to know more about Cash. I want to know more about like what happened to everything. It's just so cliffhanger-ish. You know what I'm saying? Like everything is just so, okay, what happens next? And that's what we thought Manhunt 2 was gonna be like, but it wasn't. So with all that in mind leads me to a brief summary of my Manhunt 3 concept. It may make sense, it may not make sense, but other than that, here it goes. After the traumatizing events of being part of a snuff film ring, James Earl Cash conceals his identity and secretly lives in a disparate part of Carson City since he's believed to be dead. 5 months after the events of the snuff film ring, Cash finds out on the Carson City News that a familiar reporter was found brutally murdered in her apartment complex. And knowing of this, Cash is then ambitious to find out who murdered her and if there's still a dilemma from his past that he forgot to dish out. Now I know you're probably thinking like, whoa, like, you know what I'm saying, like where did this idea even like come from, bro? Like what is he doing? Like what are you on? But yeah, this is how I picture Manhunt 3. I picture Manhunt 3 being something like this, you know what I'm saying? It goes back to Cash. He changes his identity. He secretly lives in Carson City still. Everybody believes that he's dead, you know what I'm saying? And the reporter ends up being murdered by, we don't know who, about to get into that in a second. Yeah, she winds up being murdered. He really want to find out who murdered her because of the story. And you know, he just feels like his past maybe is coming back to haunt him or something like that, you know what I'm saying? But let me go more in depth to this brief summary. Like, let me break apart all the pieces so you could really understand like what's going on here and how it all happened. So anyways, here it goes. Cash starts a new life as a new person. He finds a shelter at a job, anything to revive himself and what he's been through. The reporter has been left at psychiatric mental hospital after several months staying there due to trauma from the events of Manhunt, obviously. The reporter finally leaves the hospital so she can go home elsewhere. The reporter then arrives at her new apartment that night, only for her to be murdered by one of Mr. Nasty's followers. On the crime scene, she should have shut the fuck up is written in blood on her wall next to her corpse. Cash finds out about this on the Carson City News and wants to look into it further. Right after seeing what occurred on the news, something catches Cash's attention for him to then look out the window and see a Valiant Video Enterprises van take off once Cash has spotted it. A few days later, Cash then goes to the address where the reporter has been murdered. After he breaks into her home that night, he finds documents of Lionel Starkweather, Gary Schaefer, Valiant Video Enterprises, and gangs from Manhunt, the original. Upon leaving the apartment, Cash then spots another Valiant Video Enterprises van from across the street, but this time doesn't take off. Cash then approaches the van's driver's seat, but there's no one there. Cash is obviously confused by this, obviously. Cash is then subdued by a follower of Valiant Video Enterprises and thrown in the trunk. Cash wakes up in a scrapyard. He feels a vibration coming from his pocket. It's an earpiece that he then puts on. Once he puts on the earpiece, Cash is then greeted by none other than the man himself, Mr. Nasty, who says to Cash, "Deja vu, huh?" Mr. Nasty tells Cash that he's been planning a sequel for this for a long time, a backup in case shit hit the fan. Mr. Nasty tells Cash that killing Starkweather was the worst decision he could have made because it was gonna bite him in the ass later. Mr. Nasty says to Cash, the best decision should have been death, but now there's no escaping this one. This is the real Manhunt. Cash then throws down the earpiece and breaks it. This is where the first mission actually starts off, where it will be called something like Born Once More, something like that. Cash has to hide and evade from the Lost, which it says here, former rulers of the scrapyard, the Lost armor provides excellent camouflage and protection at the cost of being heavy and noisy. Their weaponry is gathered from the assorted shite of their environment, shards of rusty steel, broken piping, etc. I really just wanted to explain the first mission because, you know, like, I don't want the video to be too long. Like, I'm not gonna explain, oh, mission 1, mission 2, mission 3, mission 4. No, the video would be too long, you know what I'm saying? So I really want to just have the intro to like the first mission, and obviously, you know, Cash works his way throughout the game until it gets to the end, which I'm gonna explain in a second. But yeah, but then yeah, Cash runs into the Lost, which is cool because, you know, they were a bonus feature along with the cam heads, and I actually have like a cool thing that the cam heads could do. Like, they could do something like, say if you're hiding in the dark, like temporarily, they like their mask, they could like take cameras and they'll have like a flash on it. They could detect you in the dark. It's kind of like more of a challenge, so you can't just hide somewhere and you be fine. You actually like you might have to like throw a glass bottle or just do anything to get their attention off you, catching you in the dark. So yeah, that's something just unique about the king heads, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, obviously there will be much bigger threats from gangs in the game. Like the gangs will be like much tougher than the original, obviously. But yeah, I just wanted to put the Lost and cam heads to the mix because I feel like that would be like a cool little you know, a cool little thing that Rockstar did if they just threw in the gangs that they scrapped and just put it in the Manhunt 3. I feel like that would be a cool idea. And honestly, the cam heads and the Lost Horror, they look cool. So yeah. In the end, Cash then gathered enough intel to find out where Mr. Nasty has been hiding, finds Mr. Nasty, and executes him. Police are aware of this, but Cash is found guilty for charges he's done in the past, but serves only 2 years in the San Andreas State Prison Authority. Turns out the reporter wasn't going crazy after all, since the law is now aware of Cash's existence. The events of Manhunt 3 were all filmed, and the law knew that Cash was fighting for his life. So to make it fair, they terminated the death sentence. I also wanted to make that connection with San Andreas because I heard that that's where Cash actually came from. Like, he came from San Andreas, and then he done something wrong, and then he ended up somewhere in Carson City somehow. But yeah, anyways, I wanted to make it where he actually goes to prison in San Andreas because, you know, the events in Carson City possibly like scarred him, so it makes sense for the law to want to transport him out of there for nothing like that ever has to happen, for none of the snuff film stuff ever have to happen again, or at least they could prevent that from happening, since it seems like it's mainly happening in Carson City, and that Valiant Video Enterprises and Cash have some sort of beef. So I figured it would make sense for the law to move Cash somewhere else, you know what I'm saying? But this time also, Gary Schaefer is then found guilty this time for the documents that Cash had found in the reporter's apartment. Turns out the law finds it as well, and it contains Gary Schaefer just being corrupt. No, this is where the original Manhunt comes into play, where it's like the law finds the audio file of before the mission press coverage, where Gary Schaefer is like telling the cops to, like, you know, do your job, Starkweather, you know what I'm saying? Like, they obviously are getting paid to be corrupt, to hunt down Cash. So yeah, the law finds that they find other documents involving him and Starkweather, and that's how he's found guilty. Also, the Valiant Video Enterprises site finally gets terminated after so long. So since Mr. Nasty is no more, the site is no more, there's no one in charge, or at least that's what we think it is. So then the game ends, but in the end credit scene, it shows a scene of various homicides that's been filmed on the site that's called Valorous Video Enterprises, basically showing that there's a copycat out there, and that might lead to a Manhunt 4 or something. Oh, I don't know, or maybe it won't. Maybe like the series could just end off like that, just to make it a bit more, you know, like cliffhanger-ish. I mean, not as cliffhanger-ish as Manhunt was, you know what I'm saying? At least Manhunt 3 or this concept will give us some closure of what actually happened after that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not that important with the Valorous Video Enterprise joint. It's just showing that there's a copycat out there who wants to do the same thing as Mr. Nasty and Starkweather, or something like that. Who has enough money to do that, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, yeah, this is the Manhunt 3 concept. This joint didn't take that much work. It just took a lot of brain meat that I had to put together, because obviously I had to make it make sense. I didn't want to just throw some stuff in there and don't make it really make sense. But I tried my hardest to make it make sense. Hopefully this didn't sound too forced, because I kind of feel like I forced it just a little bit. But I mean, hey, it's a concept, man. It's my concept, you know what I'm saying? I like forcing shit. So yeah, anyways, that'll wrap it up. That's the Manhunt 3 concept. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to my channel. And I might not do other Manhunt stuff. I just really love this game. I feel like I said before in the beginning of the video, I just feel like Manhunt just left so high and dry, and we didn't get that much closure on anything. So if they was to make a Manhunt 3, which probably is very unlikely, this is my idea of how it will be like, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.